Hi, it's State Representative Jim Walsh here at the Capitol. You may be able to see and hear a little bit in the background. There's quite a bit of construction going on here in Olympia this summer. There's some major renovation going on the old Pritchard Library. And then there's regular kind of maintenance construction going on, cleaning up the facades, cleaning up the buildings. This is all paid for with capital budget dollars. There are special items in the state's capital budget that pay for the maintenance and upkeep of the physical plant of our state capitol here. Now, on to some other questions I've been getting about several of the increases in state taxes. Some of the business taxes, some of the property tax increases were just taking effect in the last few days, recently, about this week, toward the end of July, as well as some of the fees for a Discover Pass, for certain hunting or fishing licenses, for marriage licenses, all taking effect here in the summer at the end of July. And the questions are, why are we hearing about this now? We heard about these tax and fee increases being passed into law and signed by the governor months ago. Well, when it comes to any kind of bill or law that's passed here in Olympia, the normal timeline is the new law takes effect 90 days after the legislative session in which it passed into law. And so this applied to a number of the tax and fee increases that the governor signed at the end of the last legislative session, which was about 90 days ago. So unless a new law says otherwise, the standard practice is it takes 90 days to take effect. And this, in theory, gives people and state agencies the time to prepare and adjust for the new policy. Now, if a bill says something different, it can take effect in a different timeline. The most common example of that something different is a so-called emergency clause. If there's an emergency clause on a bill that says it would take effect immediately upon the governor's signature because it addresses some emergency in budget or in policy, then that law, as it takes effect, does become effective immediately. As soon as the governor signs it, it becomes effective. We saw this with some of the tax increases that were passed into law in the last session, but most of them, 7 or 8 of them, took effect in the regular 90-day period. Also, it's worth pointing out that a bill can also have a date certain that it takes effect. So in some cases, a bill passed, say, in the spring of 2025 might not take effect until January 1st of 2026. So a bill can describe itself when it takes effect. But if it says nothing, it generally takes effect 90 days after the session. I've also been getting some questions recently about our current governor's travel. It's been reported in the news that he travels a lot by airplane. And the questions have been, who pays for that? The Washington State Patrol is charged with security for the governor. And really, they're charged with security for all legislators here at the Capitol. But a particular focus of their security detail is the security, the physical security and safety of the governor. And within that framework, the State Patrol does make available both vehicles and airplanes, in some cases, for the governor's travel. This air travel for the governor is split between the operating budget, which funds the governor's office, and to some degree, the costs are carried by the transportation budget, which funds the State Patrol. So it's a combination of those channels for paying for the governor's air travel. And in many cases, when it's flying within the state of Washington, the State Patrol has airplanes, and they make those planes available to the governor to fly around the state. The best defense of this travel budget is for the governor's security. Now, we can debate whether that's a necessary thing to provide security, but that is the justification for these budget items and spending taxpayer dollars on governor's air travel. And lastly, I want to just touch briefly on tsunamis and earthquakes. Last night in coastal Washington, there was a small tsunami, if you can have such a thing. It was the result of an earthquake in the ocean, sort of near the Russian coast up near Alaska. And this had a cascading effect around the Pacific Basin, including the Pacific coast here in the Pacific Northwest. As it turned out, the tsunami was not a great tsunami. The wave wasn't so very large. But as it always is with tsunamis, the real risk is not so much the height of the wave as it is the mass of the water behind the wave. And this does have a connection to things we do here in Olympia, because in Olympia we do fund infrastructure projects which are meant to help manage and mitigate the effects of natural disasters like earthquakes and tsunamis. Now, that money is a combination of federal money channeled largely through FEMA, the Federal Emergency Management Agency, but it flows through the state government here and takes effect in funding infrastructure projects like levees, like in some cases dams, and other hard asset infrastructure that helps minimize the impact of disasters like earthquakes and tsunami waves. So it is an issue we deal with here at the Capitol. When there's even a small tsunami like what we saw last night and just recently, it emphasizes the importance of these hard asset infrastructure projects that help manage and reduce the risk of natural disasters. That's it for this week from the Capitol here in Olympia. I'll talk to you again soon. Until then, be well and stay strong.